Buongiorno e grazie per l'invitazione a parlare qui. I will speak in English. I am grateful to Confindustria for the invitation to be here and an excuse to escape Britain as the Brexit nightmare gets worse every week. So I would be grateful if you don't mention that word today. What I'm going to share with you are some broad ideas and some very specific examples, which I hope are new to you, I hope are useful to you, and I hope at least provoke some thought and discussion. Where I thought I would start is with some of our problems. These are the gilets jaunes in France. All across the world we have equivalents. Social division, discord, distrust of governments, people feeling they are not benefiting from globalization, from markets, from growth, and expressing their anger in many, many different ways. We also have a kind of capitalism which increasingly people see as a problem. I was saying to my colleague, I spent last weekend in Facebook's headquarters in Silicon Valley. 5 years ago, Facebook was seen as generally a good company. Now they are seen as predatory, as often likely to be seen as evil, taking your data and selling it and using it in ways which are not under your control. And very interestingly, across Europe, anti-capitalism used to be just on the left of politics, and now many of the younger thinkers of the conservative parties in France, in Germany, in Britain, are also becoming anti-capitalist. This is quite a challenge for business, I think, in the next few years. So, what do we do about it? Well, I think there's an interesting historical analogy with the first industrial revolution, which began in my country. When the first industrial revolution brought thousands of people into factories and into cities, at first, it was not a very pleasant sight. There was high crime, high poverty. People were very unhappy, a lot of unrest. And then in a second phase, in the later 19th century, there was a whole series of social innovations, of new ways of managing public health, or water, or education, in order to ensure that first industrial revolution benefited everyone. And I think we have a parallel with the fourth industrial revolution of AI and data and driverless cars. The technology has moved very fast, but we have not yet created the institutions which ensure that most people believe they are benefiting from this revolution. That is why they are resisting. That is why they are on the streets, why they are not loving Facebook at the moment. So what I'm going to talk about are some ways, I think, we need to respond more constructively. And I'm going to start off by talking about social innovation as part of the response. And in a way, social innovation begins with the paradox that we have amazing innovation happening around the world in pharmaceuticals, or cars, or aerospace, but not much innovation on the things which often matter most to people, like old age, or loneliness, or drugs, or migration, or waste. We have a huge imbalance between where the brains of the world are directed and the most important needs for innovation, which are often social, or about relationships, about how communities work. And we're beginning to see a mushrooming of different kinds of innovation, which are not just about hardware, iPhones, biotech, but also throughout business, the rise of user-driven innovation, obviously service innovation, business model innovation, data-driven innovation, design-led innovation like Apple, but also public innovation. This is India's ID card. They have introduced for 1.2 billion people in the last 5 years, an enormous, very ambitious and very successful digital project. And there too, social innovation, deliberately innovating around social needs like isolation, unemployment, integration of refugees. And I think any mature economy needs to be doing all of these things and needs to be investing innovation money and directing innovation brains to all of these. Now, the good news is in the last 10 years, the field of innovation, social innovation has become much more mature. So if we look around the world, there are many funds, social investment funds, impact investments, grant programs. There are new asset classes, social impact bonds. Has anyone in this room heard of social impact bonds? Not yet, okay. They're not in Italy, but around the world, this is the creation of new investment vehicles around social outcomes. We have many governments now with programs for social innovation, Korea, Canada, UK. There are prizes, cities defining themselves in these terms, labs all across the world, and a whole series of projects in universities, including many in Italy, and at the European level, the beginnings of trying to shift the science budgets of the European Commission, Horizon 2020, and its successors to have a social element as well as a traditional funding of hardware. And there's also a bottom-up, people-driven aspect to this as well. So this is a field beginning to come of age, still slightly marginal, but beginning to become much more institutionalized. And I thought what I would do is explain through a couple of examples what this means in practice. So here is an example of a project which we sort of helped create in my organization, Nesta, around heart attacks. So you may know that where you have a heart attack greatly affects your likelihood of survival. If you are in a hospital, 50% chance of survival. If you're on the street, maybe 9-10% chance of survival. If you are somewhere like an exhibition, like a conference center or an airport with defibrillators, hopefully 80%. So we developed a project to mobilize members of the public, trained volunteer medics, using smartphone technology, so that if someone had a heart attack, they would get to that person more quickly than the ambulance could get there. And every minute saved increases chances of survival. And this is called Good Sam. It's the world's most technologically advanced smartphone alerting system. And so if you have a heart attack, you call an ambulance at the same time, the message goes to a volunteer nearby, and on their phone, they see where the patient is, they see where the nearest defibrillator is, and they can go and save lives. So this is very practical social innovation. And in the last 3 years, this has spread all over the world. It is open source technology. It is now integrated in the ambulance systems of New Zealand and Australia, India, all across Europe. A very, very simple idea, but mobilizing social resources, social power, in order to help solve a practical problem of emergency crises in healthcare. Now, there are many, many other examples of this kind of very practical social innovation using technology and beginning to reach quite large scale. And we're just actually this year improving the service by adding in new ways through the phone of measuring vital signs, of automatically streaming video back to the hospitals, and so on. So it's quite high tech. The next example I want to give is really about where this is going for the business world. So in much of the world, there is a growing debate about corporate social innovation being the new version of corporate social responsibility. That businesses should be using their power, their brain power, their resources on social issues. And there are many examples across the world. This is one from Latin America, which is all about jobs. And much of corporate social innovation is now about helping helping people find jobs. The example I want to share with you, sorry, I've gone one slide too soon, is a very live project we are doing with Toyota called the Mobility Unlimited Challenge. And this is where Toyota, through its foundation, is acting as a social innovation supporter to try and create alternatives to the wheelchair. The wheelchair is a technology which has changed very little in recent decades. And so this is a challenge to try and mobilize clever people, imaginative people across the world to develop new solutions for people with a disability. And I'm going to show a very short 2-minute video from 1 week ago, just to give you a flavor of what corporate social innovation can mean. And hopefully, this will work.
Mobi, we believe, is the first mobility service created from the perspective of people using a wheelchair. We allow people with a foldable wheelchair to travel around the city using this electric platform, so with less effort in a simpler way.
What we want to do is to develop further the concept and build up the first demonstrator to make it on the road as soon as possible.
The world right now is designed for people who can stand up. Our technological challenge is contributing to the redesign the world. We have developed to enable the users to have a choice of standing by using cutting-edge technologies.
Wheelchairs are difficult to push and turn. They have very small front wheels that create a lot of vibration and drag. A smart chair will alter the center of the gravity of the chair intelligently, so there's very little weight on the front wheels, so they become very easy to turn and to push.
The device is called EvoWalk. It's a sleeve that goes around the user's leg. It has sensors that track their walking motion, and then we stimulate the right muscles at the right time to help them walk better.
The main goal with our device is to help people walk freely again. If people are losing the ability to walk, hopefully be more confident and walk more over time and regain that independence.
For people with lower limb paralysis that have mobility issues, who are primarily wheelchair users, much of the world is inaccessible. There's a phrase, there's just one step. Our device, because it's a legged robotic system, can take that one step and allow them to go wherever it is they need to go.
So this is a program which my organization manages for Toyota, but I just share that as an example of a company, a big company, becoming, whoops, can't find my I've lost my my mouse. Where we go? We have no technology person here, so I am completely bereft now. Yeah, I can't find that. Okay, we'll have to, unless anyone is very clever and can find a lost mouse, I will have to carry. Yeah, I did. Yeah, maybe. There we go. Okay, so that's just one example, and from the company's point of view, it gets lots and lots of good media. This is just a summary of some of the media in the last few weeks. And this is why actually corporate social innovation is quite smart business as well as being good for society. As you will see, 51 million impressions of this particular quite small competition and presence on all the media. The next example I want to give is another program we run in the UK, which I think might be of interest in Italy. And this was a project begun with big companies and the government and civil society to try and create a more structured partnership around big social challenges, but particularly ones where business had a role to play. So one was transitions to work. How do you help young people get into a good job? Another was mental health at the workplace. And the third was financial inclusion, poor people having good access to credit. And this partnership tried to link together the power of government to create policies, the power of big business to run programs within big retailers, big banks, companies like Unilever, Accenture, and then also funding a whole series of social innovations, often from small organizations, and helping them to scale. This has been going for 1 year. Everyone involved thinks it's a very good program. It will be scaled up in the next year or two as a new model of partnership, government, business, civil society around social challenges. And Italy should be an ideal country for doing this kind of program. It tries to make the three sectors multiply their capability rather than seeing them as a zero-sum game. Now, all of this, in a way, is about connecting value. Business is about value, but also linking it to values, and especially the values of staff, employees, who often want to see their company engaged in big problems like climate change or disability, solving social problems. And I think the businesses that fail to link value and values will bump into many, many problems in the years ahead. So the second strand I want to talk about is, I think, where this goes next, which is the whole field of collective intelligence. So all of us now are familiar with what is happening with artificial intelligence. IBM Watson, Google DeepMind, driverless cars, Amazon Echoes, and China, which is going furthest. Have any of you used Smile to Pay? You go into a shop, you smile, and your bank account is automatically debited. A very terrifying technology from Alibaba. And in many ways, AI is very exciting. We are involved in AI as an investor. We run programs with governments. We do training. But we see AI on its own as not a solution to many things. And we are looking increasingly at how do you combine artificial intelligence of the machines with collective human intelligence. And how do we make a whole city, a whole company, a whole sector a bit more like your brain? Your brain at this very moment is combining your observations, your memories, your creativity, your analysis. There is a long history of collective intelligence going back to the 19th century when a famous scientist observed at a country fair that when people had to guess the weight of an ox, the average of their guesses was almost precisely accurate, whereas individual experts were far off. And out of this came the notion of the wisdom of the crowds, that sometimes a large group can be more intelligent than even the most intelligent individual within it. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there were also big examples of collective intelligence. This is the Oxford English Dictionary, which was written by about 20,000 people, volunteers who looked through literature, analyzing words and their meanings. Almost everything Wikipedia did was done in the 1860s by this dictionary. So this is not a new idea. But collective intelligence has become much more mainstream recently. In science, it is becoming a major force. So this is one example in science, Galaxy Zoo, which has 1 million volunteers finding new stars, working with astronomers. There are examples in health where people pool together their data on diseases like Parkinson's in order to understand patterns, to do research. There are business models like Duolingo, which uses volunteers to add new language pairs I don't know if any of you use Duolingo. It's a free online language service, but powered by collective intelligence as well as smart technology. And around the world, there is more and more research on this. As I was saying earlier, I was at the Facebook headquarters at the weekend with the head data officer of Google as well, and they are becoming more and more interested in how do they mobilize collective intelligence to solve problems, understand patterns alongside smart computers. And just to give you a few examples of what this means. One is, I think, very simple for any business. It says, for any problem, the solutions probably lie outside your walls, so find ways of seeking out the best answers. At my organization, we run one tool for doing this called challenges.org, where we run open prizes like the Toyota prize I showed earlier. NASA takes this a stage further. So the American Space Agency. In the 1960s and 70s, they had lots of researchers inside NASA designing rockets and so on. Now they turn nearly all of their problems into open challenges. As you can see them listed here. They may be for new software, designing new spacesuits, new rockets. It may just be a corporate video. Always they open these up to crowdsourcing and collective intelligence, and then they pay people who can come up with good solutions. It's a completely different mindset of how to run an organization to the classic corporation or the classic government bureaucracy, and often much more powerful and much more efficient, because probably there are lots of people outside who have good ideas and creativity. There's a whole stream of collective intelligence looking at memory. How do we organize the world's memory in new ways? This is one of my favorites, which is a project we created in the UK called Wiki House. And it brings together tens of thousands of architectural designs like a Wikipedia. So if you are building a new house, you can download these for free. And then when you've built your house, you put back your design so someone else can use it. So it is a global memory organized on technology for anyone to use. And this field is also looking at things like meeting design. I have a slight obsession with what we can learn about what kinds of meetings mobilize collective intelligence. So at the moment, we are not using your intelligence at all in this meeting. I'm just talking at you. But there are lots of better ways of running meetings which try and find out your ideas, your experience, your data, and pull that together. So this is the emerging field, and I just want to give you a little flavor of what it might mean in the future before we then turn to a conversation. I think one of the most exciting possibilities of collective intelligence is what I call intelligence assemblies, where you pull together the things which together make intelligence in the way you do in your own brain, but doing it at large scale, in a company, in a city, in a sector. So, observations and data, models and predictions, memory, analysis, all linked up to action and learning, and a series of loops of learning which are crucial to intelligence in reality. Not just adapting what you do with some new data, but also creating new categories if you need a new way of thinking, or even an entirely new way of designing cognition, third loop learning. There's not time to go into that in detail, but let me give you an example of what I mean. So one is Google Maps. Google Maps, I think, is a very interesting example, not just of one company solving the problem of mobility, because Google, in fact, didn't have most of the skills needed to do Google Maps. Instead, they bought a lot of other companies for scrollable screens, Street View, Google Earth. They had an open API, so hundreds of thousands of new websites were created using Google Maps within them. And they had Google Map Maker, so members of the public could fill in missing bits of Google Maps. So it's an assembly of multiple elements which together make something very intelligent. And for me, this is a paradigm of both, I think, the future business and of future public services. And we're beginning to see in some fields what this might mean. And I will share a couple of examples. So one is the physical environment. There are now some good examples of intelligence assemblies for the seas and forests and so on. Cisco and NASA tried a first attempt with something called the Planetary Skin Institute, which covered the whole world as at the skin of the planet using smart technologies. And in Europe, we have Copernicus, which you all pay for, which maps Europe's forests, landmass, seas to be part of an intelligent system. In healthcare, there are examples like Amy, which tries to scan disease outbreaks across the world using data, artificial intelligence, in order to predict outbreaks and work with health officials to stop them spreading. Dengue fever, Ebola, tuberculosis. Another health example is called MetaSub, which measures the state of bacteria in subway systems across the world, in 80 cities. This is a map from the New York subway showing the pathogens and kinds of plague which you can find on the New York subway. If you read this, you will never go on the New York subway ever again. But the aim is to create like a living brain for the world, so we can spot when resistant, antibiotic-resistant strains start appearing and can then act as a single global brain to put this right. And there's a very interesting field of forecasting here growing up. This is a project of the American intelligence agencies called HFC, where they are trying to forecast threats and problems by combining groups of experts with artificial intelligence in what's called a hybrid system. And we've just started a program on our website last month asking anyone to make their own forecasts on what will happen to Brexit, the American economy, to create a learning system where everyone can become an amateur forecaster. And we will see if the crowd is more intelligent than the experts in predicting this year's political events and next year's. It's quite fun, so you can all join that. And we're also trying to create new collective intelligence ways of dealing with new technologies. So drones is one example. We run a program linking the industry, the government and cities to experiment with new uses of drones, but sharing data, sharing experience in real time as we try and work out things like traffic routes, noise controls, pricing systems, and so on. I want to finish with the field which for me is one of great possibility and I think very important for business in the next few years. And this is applying the collective intelligence approach to jobs, the future of jobs and the future of skills. Over the last year, we have been trying to pull together really an intelligence assembly for labour markets. A first part was bringing together experts and machine learning to make forecasts of which jobs would grow, or which would shrink, or which would change. How would jobs like being a waiter in a restaurant, or an accountant, or an engineer, how would they change? And there's a very detailed analysis, which you can see there, and also forecasts of which skills will be in bigger demand in 10 years' time. This is the top 10 skills we forecast for the US and the UK will be in more demand in 10 years' time. And I think one of the questions for any school system is, are you preparing young people with judgment, fluency of ideas, systems evaluation, and so on? It gives us some quite surprising patterns. So this is an analysis of digital skills and which digital skills will grow in demand and which digital skills will shrink in demand. And we find in the UK and other countries most of the digital skills provision is in fact for declining needs, not for the growth areas, like animation, right at the top there, rather than MS Office declining, accounting software declining. So this is trying to get a more intelligent collective brain on skills. And then we also analyze current job advertisements. 40 million job advertisements we've analyzed to see what they are demanding in terms of skills, what the pay level is, and then going right down into detail within individual sectors to get a granular picture of current labor market demand, and then a data-driven taxonomy, if you're really nerdy, which is this one, which we are working with Google and LinkedIn and others on applying this. The aim is, say, to turn the job system of a Milan or an Italy or a London into a true collective intelligence, which is aware of itself and smarter. And our aim is that this then becomes a tool for helping people navigate. So we turn these then into apps which can help a teenager decide what skills they need to learn. Or maybe the 50-year-old who's just lost their job in a warehouse, help them know what new skill do they need in order to become employable. Or if you're a company, to know what you should be doing with your own employees to be ready for the future. But the key is linking together large data sets and human judgment into a system which is constantly thinking and learning. Now, in a way, I hope it's clear this sort of collective intelligence is a logical evolution of social innovation, and especially social innovation which cuts across government, business, and civil society. This is our future, where the actions and creativity is informed by the best available collective knowledge. And I would argue there is a new field beginning to emerge, which we call AI plus CI. Artificial intelligence plus collective intelligence is intelligence design. And I would predict in 10 years' time, every company will employ an intelligence designer whose job it is not just to manage the hardware, the IT systems, and so on, but also to link that to tapping the brain power of employees and customers and communities. All the different kinds of resources of intelligence which can be relevant to running the company, and even more, perhaps, relevant to being part of a larger system like a city or a region. And I think this is part of the answer to the anger and the unrest, is to find a future, a route to the future where we respect people's intelligence, their ability to contribute, not just a world where data is taken from them and things are done to them, but where through social innovation, through collective intelligence, we can actually empower people to make and shape their own future rather than just being victims of it. That's my hope, that's my optimism, and it's absolutely vital that business is part of this story and not detached from it. We cannot leave these social challenges just to government or just to civil society. It has to be a shared task. And if you're interested in any of this, there is my book mentioned at the beginning, Big Mind, is available in Italian from Codice Edizione, and hopefully you might find it interesting. Thank you.
Io ho trovato tutto molto interessante, l'unica cosa un po' inquietante è il sorriso davanti al computer che ti svuota il conto corrente, nel senso che alla seconda volta il sorriso svanisce quando guardi il conto come è finito, quindi forse cambiano il tipo di tecnologia. Io però vorrei partire dall'ottimismo di Mulgan. I would like to start from your latest words. Cioè in questo mondo che ci disegna Mulgan, chi possiede i dati ha comunque un potere crescente. Quindi come mantieni la democrazia in generale, come mantieni la possibilità che tutti abbiano accesso a questi strumenti in un mondo completamente digitale. Whoever has the data has the power in your world. How do you maintain the democracy? How do you help small companies in this scenario?
Yeah. So in the conversations with Facebook and Google, I think they have suddenly realized there is a problem. They thought they were the answer, they were the good guys, and now it is increasingly clear that people want power over data. And that's as true of a small firm or a big firm. So let me give one live example of where we are trying to change the balance of power. And this is around banking. So we persuaded the government in the UK about 2 years ago to pass law ensuring that every small firm could have control over the data the bank had about them, their account details, and also then required the banks to finance an innovation program to support entrepreneurs and innovators who could generate new products and services to help a small business use that data or give that data to a third party to manage cash flow or treasuries or all the sort of things a big company would do with big data, but most small companies don't have the ability to do. And this has been a £10 million program of trying to use data to empower the smaller guys and not be, as it were, at the mercy of the big banks. And this has gone very well in the UK, and we are now extending it to energy and other sectors. But the key is giving control of data to the customer, whether it's a small business or a residential consumer, and turning on its head, I think, the model of the Facebooks and Googles, which has been that they take your data and they control it and they reap the value from the data. I think in the next 10 years we will see much more work to empower the small business, the self-employed, the citizen to be controllers of data.
Ecco, sempre dal lato delle imprese, se tutto è condiviso, quindi se i dati sono condivisi, come fai i profitti? How do you make money if everything is shared?
Yeah, so in the example I gave of the jobs market, some of this would be run as open source, non-proprietary, free data, in order, though, then to allow competition in the use of that data around apps. And I think this is more and more what we need to move towards, is data being either shared or in the control of consumers, so that business should focus on how to create value in addition, out of that, rather than data monopolies like a Google. This will become very live in transport, I think, quite soon. So a city like Milan will need to be bringing together data about driverless cars, Uber, buses, trams, and the data is most valuable if it is linked together, so you can manage traffic flows at the level of the city. It will be very inefficient if each taxi company has their own data and never shares it, or if you have competing driverless car companies, each with their own data. So we will need in many fields to make a jump to a collective intelligence model, but that will then enable, I think, much more competition where it's useful, value-added services on top of a foundation of shared data.
Ecco, l'altro aspetto che volevo toccare con Mulgan è questo. Lui con la sua organizzazione con Nesta lavora con molti governi, tra l'altro ha da poco aperto una sede in Italia, a Torino, con una decina di persone. Quindi la domanda è intanto capire quanti soldi i governi sono disposti a investire in queste attività. How much money do the government want to invest in this kind of social innovation systems?
Well, at the moment, governments are investing and business extraordinary amounts of money in artificial intelligence. Google's R&D budget this year is about $24 billion, much more than Italy, I think's total R&D budget. The Chinese government is, nobody knows the number, they've committed to a $150 billion artificial intelligence industry, and every part of China is competing to invest more money. By comparison, investment in social innovation is still quite small. Canada recently committed $1 billion towards social innovation, so there are some examples of the beginnings of quite big sums. In the UK, our government created a bank for social innovation, again about $1 billion or so, but far less than investment in aerospace, pharmaceuticals, and hardware. And so far, very little investment in collective intelligence. So our fear is we will have more and more systems with very smart machines in your mobile phone, in your car, in your house, but because it's not connected to collective intelligence, there will often be very stupid results. And we've seen this often in many fields where technology can become unbalanced. I have a PhD in telecommunications, as you said, and there's a long history of technology out of sync with human beings leading to stupid decisions. We saw it in our banks in the 2000s. The banks which had invested the most in computing made the worst decisions in 2003, 4, 5, because they didn't have the balance with human judgment. So I am trying to advocate to governments and companies, don't stop your investment in AI, but maybe put 5% into the human element, the collective element, and you will end up with much smarter systems overall than if you just invest in hardware.
Ecco, social innovation, ecco, investimenti nell'innovazione sociale fatti in un paese, e penso soprattutto a noi, cioè all'Italia, in realtà in tutta Europa il tema della sostenibilità del welfare è un problema, nel senso che un sistema disegnato con anche soltanto guardando la speranza di vita 40 anni fa, non è, le numerose riforme delle pensioni che abbiamo fatto lo dimostrano, non è più sostenibile e negli anni è stato modificato. Quindi c'è un tema di sostenibilità del welfare in tutta Europa e soprattutto in Europa perché è la patria, diciamo, è il mondo che più di altri, sicuramente non gli Stati Uniti, più di altri ha investito nell'assistenza sociale. Quindi la domanda è se this kind of social innovation can save money in terms of welfare system all over the world and in Europe. Cioè, se puoi risparmiare con queste innovazioni.
So most of our welfare systems were designed 50, 60 years ago. They were a response to the needs of the middle 20th century. So they created pensions, unemployment insurance, one or two other things. I would ask you, if you were inventing a welfare system now, what would it do? What would it focus on? I think it would be different things. It would be helping people change their skills through the lifetime so they can be employable as technology changes. It would not just be a pension you receive at 60 or 65. It would be enabling you to live a good old age full of activity and meaning. It would be dealing with new problems like isolation and loneliness, which is an epidemic all over the world, but not part of the welfare state. It would be dealing with disability. Levels of disability are rising all the time because people stay alive longer but with a disability. And yet our welfare systems are not very good for those sort of problems. So in some countries, the future of welfare requires active social innovation to discover the future measures. So Finland is a good example. Finland has an office of experiment in the Prime Minister's office, whose job it is to design and help run experiments in new kinds of welfare to help people adapt. We work with some Canadian provinces and US states, again, experimenting with new kinds of welfare. So I always get depressed when I see any country which solves its problems of welfare with a new national policy, which is just a variation of the old policies, but with no discovery, no innovation, no experiment. And this is bound to lead to failure.
Ecco, più in generale volevo avere l'opinione di Mulgan su questo aspetto, cioè sulla la visione complessiva che noi abbiamo verso l'intelligenza artificiale. Quando noi, non molti mesi fa, lo stesso Bill Gates sosteneva la necessità di mettere una tassa sui robot. In generale, quando parliamo di intelligenza artificiale, la prima cosa che viene in mente è qualcosa che sostituisce l'uomo in fabbrica, sostituisce posti di lavoro. E succede anche nel mondo della finanza, qualcosa di non sempre, diciamo, auspicabile, quando i programmi, gli algoritmi impostati dagli operatori automaticamente, sulla base di determinate variazioni degli indici, innescano vendite a pioggia in automatico, quindi amplificando, se vogliamo, il calo dei prezzi delle azioni. Quindi il tema è why are you so sure that artificial intelligence is good for us and big mind will not become big brother?
Well, I think big mind is becoming big brother. We have big business, Uber, Google, Facebook, and in China it is big government which is controlling the data in very coercive ways. And I think one of the challenges for Europe, whether or not Britain is part of the European Union, is to come up with a European alternative of how we use very smart technologies in a way which fits our values, which people feel gives them power, gives them freedom, gives them well-being. It's very easy to imagine a future of very smart technology and very unhappy people, dominated, coerced, unfree. And science fiction is full of good stories of what could go wrong. We need to create a better alternative which links value and values, which has a strong economy but also a strong society, and above all leaves people feeling more powerful. And this is where I think collective intelligence is part of that different picture of the future, a more human future. And that's partly almost a philosophical point, but it's also a very practical one. And maybe I'll just give one final example, because I know Milan has, like many big cities, has had a lot of discussion on air quality in the past. If you want to improve the air quality of a city, no amount of artificial intelligence on its own will help. Yes, you need sensors, you need to measure air quality on all your buildings. You can use predictive algorithms to forecast how it will change, but you then need people to look at which buildings are creating the worst emissions or which streets have the worst pollution and to work together on the solutions. So it becomes like a single brain, understanding the problem, implementing solutions, learning in a loop like this. This is how cities of the future will solve air quality. And if it's only the machines, and we have many examples around the world, including China, which only relied on machine intelligence, and they've always disappointed because they didn't have that link into action and that link into really the human, the community taking responsibility for its future. So I'm actually convinced cities, alongside business, will be the pioneers of collective intelligence, and probably national governments will come along 10 years later.
C'è un progetto interessante che Nesta sta sviluppando con alcuni governi. Nesta si occupa di innovazione sociale, ma non solo, diciamo di innovazione a 360 gradi. È un progetto interessante perché va a misurare quello che finora non si è mai misurato in maniera specifica, cioè l'efficacia delle politiche economiche. Quindi un governo mette in campo una misura specifica e cerca di capire, poi naturalmente si può vedere se va bene o se va male, ma non c'è mai, come c'è invece nei farmaci, quando si testano dei gruppi di controllo di pazienti per capirne l'efficacia, ecco, non c'è mai il grado di efficacia, quindi quanto è stata utile questa misura rispetto ad un universo di controllo che invece non ha beneficiato di questa misura. Quindi vorrei I would like some detail about this project about the effectiveness of economic policies around Europe.
Yeah, this is about experimentation. Yeah. So one of the aspects of collective intelligence we think is very interesting, and really is about how any system learns, is to learn through experiment. So this is happened always around drugs. Any new drug you take will have been tested in a trial with a control group to see whether people got better, whether they survived and didn't die. Business is beginning to use experimental methods like this much more. Amazon, in particular, Google, any new service, even any new color on their website, they will test with 1 million people, leave another 1 million people as a control group and see what happens. We are working now to apply this method much more in government. So, for example, we work with 12 governments testing methods of supporting business growth. We will take a random sample of small businesses and perhaps give them some coaching or some advice or a subsidy or an export credit, but then we will leave a randomly selected control group and then after 1 year or 2 years see which has grown more. It's a very, very simple idea, applying the scientific method to government policy. And we find it incredibly powerful as a way of making policy smart. And as we were saying earlier, when it comes to business support, governments spend billions and billions of euros and dollars and yen, but they have no idea what works, what is effective. So we're trying to bring intelligence to government, shocking idea, perhaps, by testing things. And we also do this in schools, so testing different methods of teaching, but with a control group. Or in welfare, testing a new model of welfare, but with a control group. And I am absolutely convinced this is part of smarter futures in business, smarter futures in government, smarter futures in cities, and in a generation's time will seem completely obvious. Why would anyone not use these methods? But at the moment, I'm afraid in this country, as in many others, there is almost no use of the experimental method at all, certainly in government.
No, e infatti tra i 12 governi che stanno collaborando su questo progetto per testare l'efficacia delle politiche economiche, è inutile dirlo, non c'è l'Italia, e del resto Salvini e Di Maio sono assolutamente certi dell'efficacia delle loro politiche economiche, quindi non c'è bisogno di testarle. Un'ultima domanda prima di dare magari la parola a voi per altri chiarimenti. Voi avete recentemente aperto a Torino una sede. Vorrei capire appunto con quali obiettivi. What is the purpose of this new headquarter in Italy?
Well, we as Nesta were founded as a British organization. We increasingly work across Europe, and when the referendum happened 2 years ago in Britain, we said we will become more European, not less. So with Compagnia Sao Paulo and other partners in Turin, we set up Nesta Italia. We have a small base in Barcelona. I was in Berlin yesterday, where we are working with the government to create a new German version of Nesta. And our hope is that even if Britain leaves the European Union, we become more truly European. And Nesta Italia is working with partners on education, the arts, health issues, as a champion of social innovation. And Italy has fantastic resources, very innovative people, and our hope is Nesta Italia, in a small way, will be able to help grow those good ideas.
Io lascerei spazio a voi a questo punto, se avete dubbi, domande, richieste, chiarimenti sulle cose che sono state presentate. Forse abbiamo un microfono che può girare in sala. Ecco qui. Grazie.
Thank you for your speech. It was fantastic. My intelligence is increased right now. And my question is related to the trap, the main trap that we can have in developing social intelligence. Mm-hmm. What would you need? And you see this kind of trap right now for increase the common intelligence. Thank you.
Okay, so at Nesta in London, we last year created a new centre, a centre for collective intelligence design. And we're trying to use this to bring together researchers in universities And there are some centers of collective intelligence now in MIT, in America, in Copenhagen, a few around the world, to bring together the people in business, in companies like McKinsey and Google, who are working on these, and to work on practical experiments on issues like labor markets and cancer. And our aim is that this builds up the field of intelligence design and its skills, its knowledge, its awareness, so we can be more useful. The biggest project this year is with the United Nations, which is creating a series of what they're calling accelerator labs to speed up the achievement of sustainable development goals all over the world using collective intelligence methods. So this will be the biggest live experiment in making these ideas useful and, I hope, full of impact. And they just last week issued a call for employees all over the world. So if any of you want to work on this for the United Nations, now is the time to apply. Yeah. I think it is lunch, maybe.
Ci sono altre domande, mi pare. Io ringrazio voi per l'attenzione, ringrazio ovviamente Geoff Mulgan e anche per questa carica di ottimismo sul futuro che ci ha dato. Thanks a lot. Grazie. Grazie.
Thank you.